The Comedian Incident. On April 15, 1984, Tommy Cooper, 63 years old and already a national treasure, stepped onto the stage at Her Majesty's Theatre in London. Around 12 million people were watching live on ITV. Cooper wasn't just a comedian, he was the comedian, the guy who turned failed magic tricks into comedy gold. That night, he came out wearing his signature red cloak, getting ready for another magic routine. His assistant, Sandy Lawrence, helped fasten it. He smiled, thanked her, and walked forward. Those words, casually spoken, would be the last thing he ever said. The audience was already laughing before the trick even started. Then, without warning, Cooper leaned backward into the curtain. His body sagged. His legs jerked awkwardly. The crowd loved it. Laughter filled the theater. To them, this looked perfect. Classic Cooper. He was famous for collapsing, freezing, flopping around like a broken puppet. Another gag, right? Except this one didn't reset. Behind the curtain, something was off. He wasn't hitting his cues. The pause stretched too long. Director Alistair McMillan knew instantly this wasn't comedy anymore. The broadcast cut to an unexpected commercial break, but live TV doesn't stop. Les Dennis and Dustin G were rushed onto the stage to keep the show moving while, just out of sight, people fought to save Cooper's life. Crew members tried reviving him, pounding his chest, attempting CPR. There was no response. Tommy Cooper was rushed to Westminster Hospital and pronounced dead on arrival. The cause, a massive heart attack. So yes, Britain's most beloved comedian died to the sound of laughter, while 12 million viewers at home thought they were watching a joke land perfectly. And speaking of things people don't take seriously until it's too late, let's talk about money. Most people don't notice it disappearing. It just leaks away quietly, subscription by subscription, until one day it's gone. That's why I want to thank today's sponsor, Rocket Money, for making videos like this possible. Rocket Money is an all-in-one personal finance app that helps you cancel subscriptions you forgot existed, lower your bills, set budgets, and actually see where your money is going. You'd be shocked how much you're repaying for things you don't even remember signing up for. When I checked my account, I found subscriptions I genuinely had no memory of. Rocket Money put everything into one clean list, and I cancelled what I didn't need in just a few taps. That alone saved more than I expected. It can even help negotiate your internet or phone bills, track spending automatically, and warn you before charges hit. Sometimes, just seeing the truth in one place changes how you think. Rocket Money users have saved up to $740 a year with premium features, and over $880 million in subscriptions have already been cancelled. More than 10 million people are using it to stay in control. If you want to start managing your money smarter, click the link in the description or scan the QR code to get started for free. You can also unlock extra tools with premium. Thanks again to Rocket Money for sponsoring this video. The Phoenix Helicopter. On July 27, 2007, a familiar scene was playing out over Phoenix, Arizona. Two news helicopters hovered above a police chase, the kind of midday drama big cities see all the time. One belonged to KNXV-TV, the other to KTVK. Both stations were broadcasting live, chasing the same story from the sky. Down below, a suspect was running in a stolen car with police right behind him. Up above, the helicopters circled like usual, cameras locked on the action, each station trying to get the best angle. Inside KTVK's aircraft were pilot Scott Bowerbank and photographer Jim Cox. In KNXV-TV's helicopter sat pilot Craig Smith and photographer Rick Kroak. None of them were rookies. This was routine work. They'd filmed plenty of chases before. Around 12:46 p.m. both helicopters drifted over Steele Indian School Park in central Phoenix. The pursuit continued beneath them. The broadcast rolled on. Everything looked normal, and then it wasn't. The helicopters clipped each other in midair. Rotor blades struck. Metal tore apart. In a split second, control was gone. Viewers at home actually saw it happen. Both aircraft still framed in the live shot before they dropped out of the sky. The helicopters slammed into the park below, crashing only yards apart. One went down near the trees, the other hit nearby. The impacts were devastating. All four men were killed instantly. There were no survivors. And in a cruel twist that almost feels unreal, no one on the ground was injured. A disaster unfolded live on television, in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, ending for lives while the city below kept moving. The Academic Interview. On September 12, 2018, Professor Rita Jitendra appeared live on Good Morning J&K on India's Doordarshan network. She wasn't there for drama, just politics. Jitendra was a well-known academic and political analyst, the kind of expert TV loved to book when serious opinions were needed. At first, everything followed the script. She sat across from the host, calm and confident, breaking down current events with the ease of someone who'd done this many times before. Clear answers, steady voice, composed posture. Then, right in the middle of a sentence, the rhythm snapped. She stopped speaking. Her face shifted. Jitendra leaned back, gasped, and struggled for air. The host instantly sensed this wasn't part of the show and called out for help. The cameras didn't cut. This was live television. Viewers watched as she fought to breathe and then collapsed in her chair. Studio staff rushed in. Someone called for emergency services. Within minutes, medics arrived and rushed her to a nearby hospital. It was already too late. Rita Jitendra had suffered a massive cardiac arrest. Doctors were unable to revive her, and she was pronounced dead shortly after arriving. The shock rippled across the country. A respected academic had died on live TV, not during a debate or a confrontation, but while calmly discussing everyday politics, a reminder that sometimes the most ordinary moments are the ones that end everything. The Breakfast Show incident. On November 13, 1986, 24-year-old Michael Lush showed up to rehearse a stunt for the BBC program The Late Late Breakfast Show. At the time, the show hosted by Noel Edmonds had built a reputation on one thing: pushing ordinary people into extraordinary and often reckless live challenges. Lush had signed up for a stunt called Hang 'Em High. The idea was simple on paper and terrifying in reality. He would jump from a metal box hanging roughly 120 feet above the ground, attached to a bungee cord that was supposed to stop him just before impact. Big drop, big thrill. Allegedly safe. This wasn't even the live broadcast, just a rehearsal. Michael climbed into the steel box as a crane lifted it skyward. Inside, he was clipped to an elastic cord using a carabiner attached to an eye bolt. Crew members watched from below. Cameras were positioned. Everything looked ready. Then the cue was given. The box opened. Michael fell, and immediately everything unraveled. The clip came loose. The bungee did nothing. There was no dramatic slowdown, no second chance. He dropped the full distance and hit the ground. The fall was fatal. He died instantly. The shock rippled far beyond the studio. Britain woke up to the realization that entertainment had crossed a line it couldn't walk back from. Michael Lush's death didn't just end a rehearsal, it permanently changed British television, bringing an abrupt close to the era of live, loosely controlled stunt spectacles where safety was treated like a suggestion instead of a requirement. The sci-fi tragedy. On September 20, 1996, 27-year-old actor Kenneth Keith Stedman was on location filming an episode of the science fiction series Sliders near El Mirage Dry Lake in California. The production was shooting a desert chase sequence, the kind of scene that looked routine after countless takes. Between shots, Stedman was driving a dune buggy across the dry lake bed. It wasn't meant to be a dangerous moment, just repositioning for the next setup. Cameras were rolling. Crew members watched. Then, without warning, the buggy hit uneven terrain. The vehicle struck a hidden mound of dirt and flipped violently. Stedman was thrown from the seat, and the buggy rolled over him. Shouts erupted across the set as crew members rushed to his side and called for emergency help. Paramedics arrived as quickly as they could, but the injuries were catastrophic. Stedman was transported to a nearby hospital, where he was pronounced dead. Production was immediately shut down. An investigation later confirmed the cause as a rollover accident and no stunts, no explosions, no special effects gone wrong. Just a sudden, tragic miscalculation. Kenneth Keith Stedman's death sent a shockwave through Hollywood. It was a sobering reminder that even in controlled environments, and even during seemingly simple moments, filmmaking can turn deadly in an instant. The skiing disaster. On January 29, 1994, Austrian ski champion Aurea Mayer stood at the top of the Kandahar downhill course in Garmisch-Partenis, Germany. Cameras were rolling for a live World Cup broadcast. Mayer was a 26-year-old, fearless and focused. She was a two-time Super G champion. That day she adjusted her goggles. Everywhere fell silent just as the signal sounded. She pushed off. Her speed built instantly, about 62 miles per hour. She sliced through the course, every movement precise. But as she hit one of the fastest sections, something went wrong. Her ski caught an edge. In a split second, Mayer lost control. Initially it was believed she struck a timing post, but later, investigation concluded she likely broke her neck upon hitting the ground, not from a post impact. She then slammed into the safety netting with tremendous force. The sound was sickening. Rescuers rushed to her side. Medical teams tried to revive her, but Aurea Mayer never regained consciousness. She was pronounced dead shortly after reaching the hospital in Nor. The entire crash had unfolded on live television. The world of skiing was shattered. In the aftermath, officials redesigned courses, strengthened safety nets, and implemented stricter standards. But no change could undo what the world had witnessed that day. A champion's final run broadcast live to millions. The Challenger disaster. On January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger was lined up on the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. This was mission number 25. 7 astronauts were strapped in and ready to go. What made this launch different was Krista McCall. She wasn't a career astronaut, she was a teacher. The first civilian chosen to go to space. Schools all over the United States wheeled in TVs, classrooms filled with students watching live. Because space wasn't just NASA's thing anymore. It was showing up in homeroom. The mood was excitement, inspiration, optimism. But the morning was cold, unusually cold. Overnight temperatures had dropped to around 36 degrees. Engineers had raised concerns about the O-rings in the solid rocket boosters. Cold weather could make them fail. The warning was noted, then ignored. The launch was cleared to proceed. At 11:38 a.m., the countdown hit 0. Engines ignited. Fire and smoke poured out. Challenger rose cleanly off the pad and climbed into a clear blue sky. From the ground it looked flawless. In classrooms, kids cheered. 73 seconds later, everything stopped making sense. At about 11:39 a.m., the shuttle broke apart in a massive explosion. A bright fireball filled the sky. For a brief moment, nobody understood what they were seeing. At Kennedy Space Center, the crowd went quiet. On live television, the commentators froze. The cameras stayed locked on the twisting smoke trail. All 7 astronauts were gone. Commander Dick Scobie, pilot Michael J. Smith, mission specialists Judith Resnick, Ellison Onizu, and Ronald McNair, payload specialist Gregory Jarvis, and teacher Krista McAuliffe. 1 second it was a symbol of the future. The next, nothing. The remains of the spacecraft fell for over 2 minutes before hitting the Atlantic Ocean at extreme speed. Later investigations confirmed what engineers had feared all along. The O-rings failed in the cold. A launch meant to inspire a generation ended up defining one, instead turning a moment of national hope into a live broadcast of shock, silence, and loss. The superhero wrestler. On May 23, 1999, WWF's Over the Edge pay-per-view was underway in Kansas City, Missouri. The plan for the night included a big entrance from Owen Hart, performing under his superhero alter ego, the Blue Blazer. Comic book vibes, dramatic flair, the whole thing. He was supposed to descend from the rafters on a cable and land in the ring like a superhero dropping into action. Simple, flashy, crowd-pleasing. Hart was 34 years old and far from a rookie, but behind the scenes, he wasn't thrilled. He'd told people he didn't like heights. He didn't trust the harness. It looked sketchy. Still, this was wrestling. The show had to go on. Around 8:00 p.m., Hart was lifted into the rafters of Kemper Arena, roughly 78 feet above the ring. More than 16,000 fans packed the building. The idea was that he'd descend a bit, then fake a malfunction for laughs. Ironically, the harness used was a quick-release system equipment designed for fast escapes, not controlled aerial stunts. The mechanism was extremely sensitive. As Hart was being positioned, the unthinkable happened. The release triggered by accident. The harness opened. Hart dropped. He fell the full 78 feet, straight down. His chest slammed into the top rope before he collapsed into the ring, completely still. From the seats it looked like slapstick. Some people laughed, others cheered. This was wrestling, after all. But the EMTs didn't hesitate. They rushed the ring immediately. Hart wasn't moving. He wasn't breathing. CPR began on the canvas, and that's when the mood flipped. The cheers died. The laughter vanished. The arena went quiet in a way wrestling crowds never do. Hart was loaded onto a stretcher and rushed to Truman Medical Center. The fall had torn his aorta. The damage was catastrophic. There was nothing doctors could do. Owen Hart was pronounced dead at 8:20 p.m. A superhero entrance meant to get laughs ended as a real-life tragedy, unfolding in front of thousands while millions watched at home, assuming it was all part of the show. The reality show. On November 27, 2019, Godfrey Gao was on set filming the Chinese reality series Chase Me in Ningbo, Zhejiang Province. The concept of the show was simple and brutal: non-stop running, chasing, physical challenges, and very little mercy for the human body. Exhaustion wasn't a side effect. It was the format. Gao was 35, a well-known actor and model, and by all public measures, the picture of health. International audiences recognized him from The Mortal Instruments, City of Bones, athletic, fit, disciplined, not someone you'd expect to collapse on a soundstage. Filming had started early and dragged deep into the night. By around 1 a.m. Gao was still running segments after hours of non-stop activity. The schedule was relentless. Rest breaks were short. Energy was expected to be endless. During one run, Gao suddenly slowed. He reached for his head. His steps became uneven. Then he dropped, falling forward onto the floor. Cameras didn't stop. This was still a reality show after all. Other contestants rushed toward him. For a split second, some thought it was part of the show. Maybe a bit. Maybe fatigue played for drama. But Gao didn't get up. He didn't move. The mood shifted fast. Crew members called for medical assistance. CPR was started as he lay unresponsive. An ambulance was summoned, but time slipped by. Gao was taken to the hospital where doctors determined he'd suffered sudden cardiac arrest. Efforts to revive him failed. Godfrey Gao was pronounced dead at 4:00 a.m. What was supposed to be high-energy entertainment turned into a national shock. Gao's death forced uncomfortable questions into the spotlight about extreme production schedules, exhaustion sold as entertainment, and how far reality television is willing to push real people for dramatic footage. The fall on set. On June 8, 2019, Eddie Garcia, 90 years old and still working, was on location in Manila filming the TV drama Rosang Agamot. This wasn't a comeback or a cameo. Garcia had never really left. For more than 70 years he'd been everywhere on Philippine screens. He was a true industry fixture. Over 600 film and television roles, heroes, villains, soldiers, fathers, sometimes all in the same decade. Crews respected him. Younger actors hovered around him like students near a master. Everyone knew him as Manawai, and that day's scene, about as harmless as it gets, an outdoor shoot in Tondo, a short walk, no stunts, no action beats. Garcia stepped into frame, took a few steps, and then it happened. He stumbled, cable stretched across the ground, part of the lighting setup. easy to miss. His foot caught it in less than a second. Garcia pitched forward, slammed onto the pavement, and stopped moving. People rushed in immediately. At first it looked like an ordinary fall, painful, sure, but survivable. Then the silence stretched. Garcia didn't get up. He didn't respond. Something was very wrong. Paramedics arrived and rushed him to the hospital. Initial reports claimed a heart attack, but doctors later confirmed the real cause. The impact had shattered his neck. A catastrophic cervical spine fracture between the first and second vertebrae. One misstep, one cable. That was all it took. Garcia was placed on life support. For 12 days his family waited. The country watched. Messages flooded in from fellow actors, politicians, and fans hoping for the impossible. But the miracle never came. On June 20, 2019, Eddie Garcia died from his injuries. A legend didn't fall during a grand scene or a dramatic finale, just a quiet walk on set, undone by something as mundane as a cable on the ground. The morning news tragedy. On August 26, 2015, what was supposed to be another forgettable morning segment turned into something no one could look away from. Reporter Allison Parker and cameraman Adam Ward were live at Bridgewater Plaza near Smith Mountain Lake, Virginia. SunriseTV.com setting. Routine vibes. It was 6:45 a.m. Parker was mid-interview with Vicky Gardner, talking about local tourism, exactly the kind of topic people half listen to while holding a mug of coffee. The camera was rolling. Viewers were watching in real time. Then reality snapped. Gunshots. Not one, not two, 8 shots. Fast and chaotic. Parker screamed and bolted. The camera jerked wildly, hit the ground, and the broadcast dropped to black like someone had yanked the plug on the morning. Back in the studio, anchor Kimberly McBroom froze, confused, staring into the void where a live feed should be. She didn't know what just happened. Neither did the audience at home. The shooter was Vesta Lee Flanagan, a former WDBJ reporter who'd been fired 2 years earlier. He'd carried that anger with him. That morning he brought it to the plaza armed, deliberate, and waiting for the camera light. He shot Parker first. She tried to escape but collapsed. He then turned on Adam Ward, shooting him as he was still filming. Vicky Gardner was also shot but survived. The attack lasted seconds. The shock lasted far longer. Flanagan fled the scene and, in a grimly modern twist, uploaded his own footage to social media while on the run. Hours later, police caught up with him. During the chase, he ended his own life. Allison Parker and Adam Ward died there at the scene. A normal morning broadcast meant to fade into background noise became a permanent scar, replayed not by choice but by the cruel timing of live television. The Cavett Show moment. On June 8, 1971, The Dick Cavett Show taped at ABC Studios in New York, and the guest lineup was stacked: authors, thinkers, familiar faces. Sitting among them was J.I. Rodale, 72 years old, publisher and the man behind Organic Gardening magazine. Rodale was basically the high priest of the organic food movement. He was upbeat, energetic, clearly proud of what he'd built. During his segment, he spoke enthusiastically about health, longevity, and living naturally. At one point he joked that he planned to live to 100. The crowd laughed. Cavett grinned. Nothing felt off. When his interview wrapped, Rodale stayed seated as the next guests joined the stage. The discussion rolled on. The cameras never stopped. Then no build-up, no warning, the vibe shifted. Rodale leaned back in his chair, his head tilted. He went silent. For a few seconds, people assumed it was a bit dry humor, an awkward pause. Television has those, but Cavett sensed something wasn't right. He looked over and saw Rodale completely still, eyes closed. That's when the laughter died instantly. Crew members rushed in. Medical staff tried to intervene, but it was already over. Rodale had suffered a massive heart attack and died right there on the studio floor mid-taping later. Dick Cavett would call it one of the most surreal and unthinkable moments of his entire career. Proof that even a talk show about healthy living isn't immune to history's worst timing. If you want more stories like this, hit subscribe and drop a suggestion for the next one in the comments.